That's a wrap on 2018 National Signing Day for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Matt Zenitz joins me now from Tuscaloosa to break things down, talk about some of the news and notes of the day. And we'll start with Alabama's overall ranking. Under Nick Saban, they've been the #1 recruiting class in the country for the last 7 years. They did slip in the rankings there. What overall was Nick Saban's reaction during his press conference today, and what seems to be, I guess, what you would consider a down year for the Crimson Tide in terms of recruiting?
Well, the answer was pretty much what you would expect, and talked about the positives of the day and the fact that they were able to fill one of the primary needs and to get the DB group that they were able to get with 5 highly rated guys, and also talked about just some of the other highly ranked players that they were able to bring in, and talked about the fact that it's about quality more than it is quantity, and just some of the things that you would expect Coach Saban to say. But from my standpoint, obviously, this is an off year for Alabama. They did get some very good players with Patrick Surtain. They got Iyabi Anoma, who I think the last time I looked was ranked among the top 5 players nationally in this year's recruiting class. But there were a lot of guys today that Alabama very much wanted that chose to go elsewhere, and that's just typically not the case with Alabama. That guys that are priorities and top targets for them, for those guys and for so many guys to make the decision to go elsewhere. So yes, Alabama landed some very good players, and they're happy about getting some of those guys and are happy with the group that they got, but it's definitely un-Alabama-like for them to miss on some of the guys that they missed on, especially the number of guys that they did miss on.
Yeah, and I think Justin Ross being one of those, Malik Langham, some other guys going in a different direction to other schools. Now, taking away some of the positives, area of need for Alabama, I think defensive backs was one big area that they fulfilled. Can you just expound upon that and how Alabama was able to hit some of those targets?
Alabama lost their top 6 DBs from last year, so that was, I think, undoubtedly the top area of concern, the top need going into this recruiting process, and they did a great job with it. They brought in, during the early signing period, 3 talented guys. I would say most notably Savion Smith, who is at LSU. As recently as the beginning part of last year, the top JUCO corner in this year's recruiting class, somebody who they view as being an instant impact type guy. Josh Jobe is somebody who isn't ranked as high as Patrick Surtain. He's now ranked among the top 2, 3, 5 players in the country at cornerback for this year's recruiting class, but somebody that people inside that Alabama building feel like should be ranked among those top 5 guys, and somebody that they view as a future NFL player. They're really excited about him and feel like he has the ability to come in right away and compete for early playing time. And then you add 2 more defensive backs today. You add Eddie Smith first, who they feel like is underrated, should be ranked higher than as a 3-star recruit, and then after that, get the big one, get Patrick Surtain, somebody who is ranked as the top cornerback in this year's recruiting class, one of the top players in this year's recruiting class, and somebody else that they believe can come in and be a factor early on this season.
Now, Matt, Alabama signs 18. Obviously, they've still got a little bit of room. Nick Saban indicating during his press conference that they might go after some other targets in terms of transfers. What area of fulfillment do you think that they'll really try to hone in on?
I would say quarterback and defensive line specifically, that they would look at and try to bring somebody in just to help from a depth standpoint. Not going to throw out any names yet, but those would be the 2 positions where I could very much see them exploring some options at those spots to try to help with depth there.
And Matt, Georgia taking the #1 spot with Kirby Smart there. Is there any cause for concern? Obviously, knocking Alabama off its pedestal at that #1 spot, being able to come in and take some of those in-state guys as well here in the state of Alabama. What are your thoughts overall on that?
I don't know about cause for concern, but Georgia's doing a good job over there, and Georgia was already a very good team, evidenced by the fact that they were in the national championship game and were leading at halftime and looked to be in a position to be able to win that game, and now add even more talent to what was already a very talented team led by, I think he's the #1 player, #1 quarterback in this year's recruiting class. At worst, he's #2 at each of those spots, in Justin Fields, and have a lot of talent to go along with him. So I think going into the day today, if I remember correctly, they already had 6 5-star prospects going into the day, and then added I want to say at least 2 or 3 more top 100 players during the course of the day today, and it might have even been more than that. Just a really, really good, great overall class for Georgia, and they're going to continue to be a threat in the SEC. Then you saw some other SEC schools to go along with that, even though they weren't number one, add some talent, and I think it's just very clear that SEC is going to continue to be competitive going forward, led by Georgia and Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, I wonder if Nick Saban sent his disciple there, Kirby Smart, a text message congratulating him. Who knows? Thanks so much for all your insight, Matt. Appreciate it as always. And for all your Alabama Crimson Tide recruiting updates, you can visit us on AL.com.